All right, let's get more on the president's plan to spur business lending. Let's bring in senior White House economic advisor Austin Goolsbee. Austin, good to have you back with us. He's joining us from the White House.
Good to see you again.
Hey, Austin, as you know, that this is going to require congressional approval. It's been tough getting, the outlook for a lot of things right now are in question, whether it's health care, financial reform. So what's the likelihood that this ultimately gets through Congress? What are you hearing from lawmakers that they're going to support this?
I'm not a congressional legislative expert, but I will say I think there's pretty broad consensus out in the country that at a time when the unemployment rate is 10% and the normal small business engine of recovery is rather stalled because of the credit crunch, that we've got to get some availability of credit to small businesses around the nation. So I would hope that there's going to be bipartisan consensus on that.
So, in other words, it's a good thing that there's midterm elections coming up, and that's why there'll be help for small businesses.
Look, no, I don't think it has to have anything to do with elections. I think it has to do with where we are in the economy, that we're seeing the first turnarounds of recovery. But if we want to get job creation going, we've got to start getting credit to small business because they have significantly lagged the rest of the economy.
Help us out, Austin, with looking at the situation for small businesses, because when you look at the consumer, obviously they're in debt up to their eyeballs and beyond, right? 120, 130% debt to income. Is it a good idea to be spurring lending right now to small businesses? Can they take the debt?
Well, it depends which small business we're talking about, and it depends which consumers you're talking about. Obviously, not all consumers are that heavily leveraged in debt as you're describing. What I will point out is that in previous recoveries, as you come out of recession, small business tends to be one of the engines of growth. They tend to be very cyclically sensitive, and you have not seen them recover with the rest of the economy in this one. And a lot of experts look at that and think that that is because small business had a very tough time getting credit. So I think that there will be, you're right, there has been reduced demand for loans by small business through the recession. But as you come into recovery, you want to have the availability of credit, and no one will deny that banks have really tightened standards on all sorts of small business credit. And that is also impacting big business, I would add, because a lot of the small businesses are suppliers to big business. So you've seen like the CEO of Boeing saying he thinks we've got to figure out the small business credit issue, or else it could impact Boeing's growth in the coming years.
Austin, because it's money related with TARP, you know that there's some concerns from community bankers out there. They're concerned about the stigma associated with TARP. And I think the concerns are that maybe ultimately any bank, any smaller bank that takes on some loans from TARP money could ultimately see some restrictions laid out later on by the administration. What guarantees can you give those small banks that indeed that will not happen?
I'm glad you asked about that. The president tried to make clear in his remarks, and we've made clear to all of the community and regional banks when talking about this program, this isn't coming out of TARP. This is money that was paid back from TARP and would be legislation, so it would not be encumbered with whatever stigma was associated with TARP. This is really a pretty basic program in which you can get cheap capital.
But will there be restrictions?
Expand your lending.
Could there ultimately be restrictions laid out for any bank that takes money from the government, essentially?
No, the point of this is not to apply the restrictions, encumbrances, or however you described it, of TARP, that this would not be associated with the stigma of that. No.
All right. Hey, Austin, thanks so much for joining us. Senior White House economic advisor there, Austin Goolsbee.